Billy Carson and Wes Huff had a debate, and I don't know when this debate took place, but all I know is that on my feed, several things came up that showed that Billy Carson's career is over and Billy Carson lost the debate and Billy Carson's credibility has been destroyed. I looked into a few of those videos. They were clips of parts of the debate. I really didn't know what they were talking about, but I knew what they were talking about. That Billy wasn't able to um, really hold his own in a debate with a Christian scholar. So many people have listened to Billy Carson's um, dialogue about Christianity over the years, and some have been convinced about what he has said with regards to the way the Bible might um, endorse slavery, may endorse um, genocide, may endorse brutality, and that there may be some distinctions between the Old Testament and the New Testament in terms of consistency of character. So, Billy Carson had a chance to present these views with an actual biblical scholar, Wesley Huff. And like I said, I only saw clips. So then today, Billy Carson put out his own video. It was 3.5 hours long. I did get to see it, and I absorbed all of it, and I had a certain reaction to it. But I'm glad I waited because Wes Huff published his video showing the debate between him and Billy Carson. So I know the whole story now between the both of them. And I had an entire video that covered Billy Carson's point of view, but I deleted it because when I saw Wes Huff's um, video, I realized that there was more to the story. And it was a lesson to me that you should always wait until you have all sides of the story. So, um, after having looked at everything, I decided to look at this more objectively. And my tool of choice for objectivity is artificial intelligence. And so I saw that the the perceptions between people really came down to the way that Billy Carson communicated and the way that Wes Huff communicated, right? The way they communicate is different, right? And if you want to know what Billy Carson's view on this is, you can watch Billy Carson's video. And if you want to know Wes Huff's point of view, you can watch his video. And all the numerous videos that are out there that give a summary. Although I don't think any gave a very good summary of Billy Carson's point of view, which is, in a nutshell, Billy Carson has this friend. This friend set up the debate, and this debate, from Billy Carson's standpoint, from his sense of things, was one-sided, and that his friend betrayed him. His friend that he had flown on jets, took on vacations, and gave NBA tickets to, and who lives just 2 minutes away from him in the same gated community, um, violated his trust. And so the Ring doorbell footage of Billy Carson trying to visit his friend at 2 a.m. or so in the morning, that's all basically because they live real close to each other. And as Billy explained, he goes and visits him all the time, um, in the morning, because that's when there's less activity going on. and they can actually talk and focus. So, and then Billy was saying that he had told everyone involved he didn't want that video going out. He didn't want his face out. And Billy said that basically he was sick. And I did my own calculations based off of the time frame that Billy gave. I would put it at about roughly 2 months from the end of September to roughly about now. Billy Carson has been sick, according to what he has shared. And in that illness, it was a severe illness, it was catastrophic, and it was to such a level that during the time of the debate, um, that he just wasn't all there. And the reason why he agreed to the debate was number one, Mark, um, I think his friend name is Mark, I'm not sure, but his friend put him um, up to it to get him, back out there talking. Um, anyway, that's the overall story. Um, I had a whole video about it. It was much more eloquent and detailed than that. But anyway, moving on, when I looked at Wes Huff's side of it, um, I then realized what was going on. And it basically comes down to communication style. So, this is a video for those that want to understand why the debate looks the way that it does. Why does Billy Carson look the way that he does? And this is for people who want to look at this from an independent analytical standpoint. So that's when, and if you read this while I was talking, you're kind of, and you're caught up a little bit. But um, I was saying to the artificial intelligence engine, let's talk about linguistic and verbal profiles, specifically how true scholars with a PhD talk different from those with at most a bachelor's degree, but in which the latter rely more on anecdotes, emotional language, and circumstantial logic. The differences are more stark in a debate when postdoctoral scholars refer more to authoritative sources and tend to be more precise in their language. What is that all about? So basically, um, that's not always true. You have people with PhDs that don't always make the most convincing communicators. You have people with bachelor degrees who are the most intellectual and well spoken and methodical and systematic communicators imaginable. But in general, I'm talking to the what I would say is the societal mean, right? What do we ordinarily encounter in day to day experiences? What we generally encounter in day to day experiences is this scenario right here. And so I wanted to break that down in a more logical way, rational way, so that we can understand where these differences are and how they play into our perception of who wins debates and who is telling the truth and who is right and who is wrong. So basically, we see that the, there are differences between PhD level scholars and those with, you know, and not really bachelor degrees, but those that have their education up to a certain level, but they they kind of stop there and they don't dig into the training, intellectual habits, and the role, that people with those backgrounds, um, you know, go into. So here's where it breaks down. Um, PhD scholars, they are immersed in a culture of evidence-based reasoning and peer-reviewed discourse, and they are taught to construct arguments grounded in authoritative sources, data, and established methodologies. Precision is key, and their work is often scrutinized by experts who can root out logical mistakes, fallacies, and unsupported claims It's very embarrassing when that happens in those situations. So you have every incentive to make sure that you dot every I and cross every T. This cultivates a habit of hedging using qualifiers like likely or suggests, not very definitive, right? Um, this is where you get some of the criticism of people with those backgrounds as being uh, not direct enough, but um, and to avoid overgeneralization, which is critical in academia, right? Scholars are trained to prioritize logic over emotion to establish credibility and avoid cognitive biases. And for the sake of this discussion, we'll just call it bachelor's level thinkers and below. Undergraduate education typically focuses on foundational knowledge rather than the intense rigor of generating original contributions to a field. That's often what we hear said about people who go through a PhD. You're pursuing an original contribution to the field. I haven't really seen evidence of that, but that's what they say. Arguments often lean on common sense, anecdotes, and anecdotes also mean stories. How well do you tell a story, right? That's what you typically hear in the world of business, in everyday life. How well do you tell a story, right? And so the power of the story is a lot more important at this level of communication and way of summoning knowledge, as well as practical experience. And so, emotional language, circumstantial logic are accessible tools for persuasion when addressing general audiences as they resonate more with everyday reasoning, right? So then you get to precision versus accessibility, right? So the postdoctoral communication values exactness, and often assumes a knowledgeable audience. They may prefer referencing authoritative sources, journal articles, canonical texts, rather than personal anecdotes as it strengthens their arguments in specialized discourse. Bachelor's level thinkers, without the same depth of academic rigor, individuals may rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts that make complex issues easier to understand, but less precise. Let me pause here. During this discussion, keep in mind that um, in the real world and in real life, the, the, the actions and the way of responding that typically works best is the bachelor level and below way of thinking. Okay, that is to be clear. We often can get our jobs done and get through our day through heuristics, through narrative, right? But that's not always applicable, and that will be shown here as we go along. Um, and people in this level of thinking are more adept at addressing broader audiences. So they're able to relate to most people using stories. How do you tell a story? In a job interview, in a boardroom discussion, in a sales conversation, you name it. Um, Using relatable examples, emotional appeals to establish connection and trust. So when we're talking about a debate, right? The debate between Wes Huff and Billy Carson, they come from different avenues in how they approach the way that they're going to put forward their point of view. So, PhD scholars tend to approach debates as exercises in intellectual rigor, often avoiding rhetoric that appeals to emotion unless it's strategic. Their arguments are structured with clearly defined premises, logical progressions, and explicit reliance on well documented evidence. They often display a certain intellectual humility, whether it's real or genuine, acknowledging the limits of their knowledge or the complexity of a topic. Because when we're talking about intellectualism, generally speaking, humility, feigned or genuine, is usually a strategically safe way to navigate potential pitfalls of uncertainty. Bachelor's levels thinkers may lean into, and by the way, when I was younger, I used to find that absolutely annoying. I absolutely could not stand the anyway. Bachelor's level thinkers may lean into rhetorical persuasion rather than strict logical structuring. Emotional resonance often takes precedence, which can make their arguments more compelling to non expert audiences. Debate may include circumstantial logic. Well, this worked for me, so it should work for you, and appeals to shared experiences or values. Now, how this works depends on the debate itself. That's what's not in this discussion here. It depends on the debate. In some debates, this way of approaching things work, and in others, this way approaches. It depends on how I say it depends on how emotionally invested the audience is. So I wasn't emotionally invested in either side of this debate. So that's why I'm looking at it this way. So anyway, epistemology. Say that word 3 times fast. Epistemology. Anyway, I used to hang out with PhD folk, and they used to love to use that word a lot. Anyway, abstract versus concrete. PhD scholars favor abstract reasoning and systems thinking. They often discuss theoretical frameworks or long-term implications that are removed from immediate experience. Their reliance on established knowledge systems fosters a level of detachment from everyday realities that may guide level thinkers. You can tell that AI is not emotional because an emotionally sensitive technology wouldn't use labels like this. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, bachelor's level thinkers tend to operate within a concrete epistemology, valuing lived experience and practical knowledge as primary sources of truth. And that's generally speaking where I ended up in my life, is how I see things, even though I am capable of using these tools by way of the career, industry, and other aspects that guided my adult life. Their arguments may lack the theoretical depth of PhD level scholars, but often seem more relevant to real world applications. Authority and credibility. So, PhD scholars, their credibility often comes from their credentials and their ability. This is very important. This right here is probably the most important. Their credibility often comes from their ability to cite rigorous peer reviewed sources. There is an art form almost to this particular skill, citing rigorous peer reviewed sources. They tend to assume their authority is intrinsic to their expertise and therefore may not work as hard to win over audiences through emotional connection. In many cases, they're not going to do that. It really just comes down to how how streamlined their flow of thought is and their ability to actually name drop references and sources, right? And it's a habit you develop, and the more developed that habit is, the more powerful that ability comes off. Without the same academic authority, they rely more on relatability and narrative to establish trust. This approach can be particularly effective in environments where formal expertise is not universally respected. And there are environments where formal expertise is not universally respected or even cared for. So, limitations in communication. So there are some limitations to these approaches. So the PhD scholars will, and it can also be, you can also say PhD scholar is a synonym for intellectual, like Thomas Sowell or, you name it. They risk alienating lay audiences due to an overemphasis on precision or abstraction, making their arguments seem inaccessible or out of touch. And they may lack training in rhetorical techniques that appeal to non specialist audiences. I have seen some intellectuals overcome this. Thomas Sowell, for example, by having even more precise language than typical, uh, where it has crossed a boundary where it draws from um, deep analytics that they've conducted, and then um, greatly condensed and summarized um, back to the level that or vernacular that um, the majority would understand. It's a way of um, not telling a story, but still telling a story. So you have to look at Thomas Sowell's actual works, which is published online, the way that he talks and conducts himself. It's the most brilliant way of an intellectual expressing their point. Doesn't necessarily mean that people agree with Thomas Sowell, because I've met some that don't. But his style, his way of conveying, and he's 90 years old or more or older, so he's really honed um, these skills since the day he verbally debated Congress people. So bachelor's level thinkers, they risk oversimplifying information and relying on logical fallacies, which can weaken their arguments and weaken what they say uh, when it comes under scrutiny. And there are many people, they try to explain something to someone that is probably more educated or learned. It's pronounced learned, but are learned in a particular uh, area. And when you try to explain something to that person, they tear down and absolutely destroy what it is you said, right? And so, anyway, I've been guilty of doing that, and I've also been a recipient of that. So I know how it goes, and you just have to handle these things very delicately. And so people who do this type of communication, where they oversimplify or rely on logical fallacies, may not be equipped to handle complex, nuanced debates that require deep, deep knowledge in the subject area that they're talking about. So, what is the takeaway? The differences between these two groups highlight distinct approaches to truth, persuasion, and audience engagement. And this is going to get real interesting, folks, because I actually am about to use ChatGPT in an advanced way, right? Um, so, anyway, here's what I had to do, because this makes it actually work, right? Because I wanted two examples of what I was talking about, which is the two examples I'm actually talking about. See, ChatGPT is able to search the internet. So when I use the keywords, can you find a few articles by Wes Huff and Billy Carson and compare and contrast their communication styles according to what has been discussed? It literally went out to the internet in real time, and then it brought back the documents, and then it analyzed it for me. So here's what it did. So Wesley, look how I changed the name. So anyway, yeah, it got the formal name, Wesley. So Wesley Huff and Billy Carson are both communicators who engage with topics related to history, spirituality, and ancient texts. Yet their communication styles and methodologies differ significantly. reflecting their distinct backgrounds and objectives. So, Wes Huff, an apologist, and what that means, if you've never come across that word before, um, it, in this case, apologist isn't someone who is apologizing for something they're sorry for, right? No, apologist is someone who defends defends a certain point of view. So Wes Huff is a Christian defender. He defends Christianity. He fights for Christianity using his research and knowledge. And his work emphasized, well, yeah, it says it right here, emphasized defending the Christian faith through scholarly, and yeah, okay, so anyway, so see, there I go. I'm doing exactly what this is saying. I'm using the narrative form. Anyway, so Billy Carson, an entrepreneur, author, and television host known for exploring ancient civilizations, consciousness, and alternative historical theories. He is the founder of Forbidden Knowledge, Incorporated, and engages in discussions that blend ancient wisdom with modern interpretations. Communication style. Wes is analytical and scholarly, methodical approach. Say it 3 times fast. Methodical, methodical, methodical. I almost said methodological, which is a whole different thing than methodical. But anyway, utilizing historical evidence and scholarly research to support his arguments. For instance, in his article, Christmas Isn't Pagan, but it is, folks, he examines historical claims about the origins of Christmas, providing a nuanced analysis based on historical data. Structured and evidence based, his writings are characterized by clear structuring, often addressing misconceptions by referencing authoritative sources and historical documents. Billy Carson, um, he tells stories. That's what all that means. He tells stories, and he's able to blend ancient wisdom and modern science, and he makes it so that everybody can understand it. And he's engaging. He has the personality, the charisma to be able to reach people and not speak above them, not speak below them, but speak right to them, right? So Wes is going to use citations, books he's read. He's going to talk about not only the book, but the name of the author, the page that it was on, the paragraph it was in, the sentence that it was located in, all of that, right? That is the training. I used to be able to do that. So I used to be able to do that, but um, I've been out of situations where that was a necessity or where that was valuable. So I no longer do that anymore. But yeah, um, but it's a real thing. Um, Historical records and established. The key there is established. You don't want to use anything that would um, call into question your credibility. So you want to reference things that everyone else has agreed to. Grounding his arguments in widely accepted scholarship. He critically examined sources, addressing potential biases and ensuring the reliability of the information presented. Billy Carson is going to use alternative texts if they are um, um, relevant to what it is he is trying to explore. You see, their agendas are going to be different. Billy Carson is exploring something, and it's an exploration that is not sanctioned by or supervised by an academic institution or establishment. He's just going to follow what his interests are. But those interests can overlap with some of the research areas in an institution, and that's why you have this debate. So Carson often references ancient texts like the Emerald Tablets and explores theories involving extraterrestrial influences, which are considered fringe by mainstream academia. His use of sources tends to be more interpretive, aiming to uncover hidden meanings and connections that challenge conventional historical narratives. And when it comes to that challenge, I think that's where the polarization exists. Audience engagement. So, Wesley Huff is going to lean towards education, lectures, podcasts, articles aiming to educate individuals about Christian apologetics and biblical reliability. And he uses a platform like YouTube to reach a wider audience, providing content that encourages critical thinking and informed faith. Billy Carson leverages various media, including television shows, podcasts, and social media, to disseminate his ideas to a global audience. Not a real difference between their modes of communication. But Billy Carson is much more focused on community building through initiatives like Unite the 99 um, and the work that him and his wife, Elizabeth Carson, does. Philosophical approach. So Wesley Huff is involved in what's called defensive apologetics. I used to do the same thing myself at a different level, but defensive apologetics. His work is centered on defending the Christian faith against objections, providing rational justifications for belief, and clarifying misconceptions. Historical veracity. Huff emphasizes the importance of historical accuracy and the integrity of biblical texts, often addressing challenges posed by modern skepticism. Just a word of advice to Wesley Huff: um, if you don't use it, you will lose it. So stay with it. Billy Carson, exploratory inquiry. Carson encourages exploration beyond traditional paradigms, delving into metaphysics, ancient mysteries, and the potential for human conscious expansion. That's where I am. So, um, I'm on that road, um, going beyond traditional paradigms, but respecting them at the same time. Um, Delving into metaphysics, ancient mysteries. Well, I don't delve so much into ancient mysteries these days anymore because I find them less and less interesting. But definitely metaphysics and the potential for human conscious expansion. Integrative thinking. He integrates concepts from various disciplines, including science, spirituality, and history, to propose holistic understanding of science of human existence. He could be considered a form of a polymath, a type of polymath. And generally speaking, polymaths historically have not done very well with debates. They know too much to really be effective with someone who is much more specialized. In summary, while both Wesley Huff and Billy Carson engage with historical and spiritual themes, Huff's communication style is rooted in scholarly analysis and traditional apologetics, focusing on the defense and rational justification of Christian beliefs. In contrast, Carson adopts a more exploratory and narrative driven approach, blending ancient wisdom with modern interpretations to challenge conventional perspectives and inspire broader thinking. All right, so I just went all into it with, um, yep. So what all of this here means is, why do do they appeal to different people and in different ways? Because the majority of comments on Wes Huff's thread took the flavor of They were so convinced by Billy Carson in terms of questioning their Christian faith. But now, thanks to Wes Huff, they now um, see the light, right? That's pretty much what the comments were on Wes Huff's stream. And so, and I was also curious about the overreactions to Billy Carson's career being ended and all of this kind of stuff. I'm just curious about it, people watching of a different sort. So, how does that break down? So, Wes is linear, methodical, grounded in evidence-based argumentation, verifiable references, established scholarship, and he's able to display that in real time. He got books on his shelf, like right behind him. He had all these manuscripts and books, and he even had papyrus that he hand cut and made an authentic replica of ancient papyri. He focuses on presenting logical, well supported claims, and he comes across as detached. And audiences, um, yeah, audiences who are not used to that will see that he will appear that he is not grossly invested in his point of view. He looks detached and therefore he looks more honest. Billy Carson's approach, conversational, emotive, right? He talks about experience. He talks about the interpretation, right? Um, what does it really mean? That's where Billy Carson comes from. So he has personal conclusions, historical reinterpretations. Wes Huff asked Billy Carson, how does he, what method does he use? What is his methodological system? See, there you go. What is his methodological system for um, identifying what is valid, what is accurate, and what is truthful? And Billy Carson, this is Billy Carson's exact words. I get on planes, I go to ancient sites, and I speak to indigenous cultures and peoples. And so, and then Wes was like, yeah, that's valid. Wes said that was valid. But beyond um, approving of Billy Carson's approach to gaining knowledge, the issue was that Billy, in that particular discussion, wasn't able to um, structure that knowledge and that experience in the format that Wes Huff is accustomed to in the environments he frequent, where credibility depends on being able to systematically verbalize what it is that you are claiming, and that you and what you, well, you can't say believe, but that sort of thing. So draws from personal, but so then Billy Carson, personal conclusions, historical reinterpretations, emotional appeals that definitely do not align with scholarly standards of evidence. His lack of immediate recall for precise evidence or scholarly references may undermine his arguments in real-time debates, despite his demonstrated capacity to present professional and well-researched ideas in other contexts. So, both parties can seem disconnected because they are engaging from different paradigms of discourse. And here, the term disconnected means that the people that are going to relate most to Wes Huff are not going to relate to Billy Carson. And the people that relate to Billy Carson are nowhere, shape, form, or fashion going to find the way that Wes Huff approaches things acceptable. So there is some polarization there. It's just like in other areas of life. We saw that in November of this year, right? So anyway, the role of evidence and recall. So Wes is trained in formal argumentation and has developed the skills of being able to remember and contextualize specific data or historical sources. This reflects his academic training, where intellectual currency is the ability to cite and critique sources effectively. Billy Carson used to have that skill as well. What I mean by that is the earlier presentations of Billy Carson that really um, resonated with people in the earlier days was connected to his affiliation with academic institutions like Harvard and others, right? And that was a time where he was being developed to uh, work through information in that way. But I think he drifted over time to a much more narrative style. And that happens to many of us with age who were once connected to um, the standards of academia in the West. And so, yeah, Wes Huff's linear approach assumes that his opponent and audience shares the same respect for evidence-based reasoning. So there's a default expectation in Wes Huff's approach, and Billy Carson is undoubtedly knowledgeable. He has all these books and presentations and media presence, right? And, you know, his books are going to be criticized. His presentations are going to be criticized by, um, academicians, right, and others. But they're not they're not without merit. There is actual fact. There is actual evidence that even meets the standard of academia in many of Billy's um, productions, right? So, it's more of a mix. And so his debate persona might reflect a struggle to transition from the storytelling approach to the evidence based approach in a live formal debate. His reliance on broad conclusions without directly connecting them to immediate specific evidence can weaken his arguments in a setting where precision is paramount. So there's a mismatch of frameworks. Huff is working within the academic and theological debate tradition. His arguments are designed, it's by design, to dismantle opposing views through evidence, structure, and logic. This is what he does for a living. I shouldn't say for a living, but this is something that he does on a significant basis. Carson operates in an exploratory and inspirational tradition. He wants to inspire you to a higher level, inspire you to ascension, aspire you to a higher frequency, vibration, and energy and consciousness. His focus is on engaging the audience's imagination and challenging conventional narratives rather than defending his claims with rigorous evidence. Because Billy is talking to your heart, Wes Huff is talking to your mind, right? And this creates a mismatch where Wes Huff cannot reach Carson, and by extension Carson's true audience, because Carson's arguments are rooted in broader interpretations that Huff sees as unsubstantiated. And Carson cannot reach Huff because Huff demands a level of detail, academic rigor, and logical sequence, step by step, where you can trace it, just like you would trace it in a regular book with a bibliography and an index and a glossary and all of that, right? That is secondary to Billy Carson's communication goals. So that creates a perceived disparity in preparedness, and what you saw is the results. So Billy Carson's inability to summon his research in the debate could come from different debate priorities. Um, and he also said he was sick, and so he may not have summoned the energy to really amplify his his typical style of countering arguments or really zeroing in on what he really believes, right? And even if he did, it may still not have worked. Um, so yeah, it's just the lack of evidence, and in some cases the pressure of this format, right? Because a lot of what you see Billy do, it's pre-planned. It's pre-planned, right? And so, you know, he's going to have some challenges there. Whereas in my own experience, a lot of what I do um, is not pre-planned, right? I do very well in live, interactive type of discussions, right? If I had other people here and we were talking about this, it would be a whole different vibe, whole different energy. But I don't do that. Not on this platform, and not in this. This is a very personal thing that I do here. But yeah, I would definitely um, say that it depends on what you're used to. And myself, I'm used to the actual debate situation. I'm used to all that kind of stuff, right? But not everybody is set up for that, right? And you know, Billy's platform is one where he has slides, he has a presentation, and he's just going to flow with it that way, right? It's very one directional. He's going to be on a podium and he's projecting out, right? Whereas many of us have been in a, a field of work where, and so has Billy, but just not in this particular area, right? But we've been in a field of work where we've had to be much more live all the time and interactive. And so we've harnessed our skills of being able to use our intellect from our education in real time. And Billy can do that. He just can't do it in this way to this level um, with this particular um, person that he is debating with. He does well, he excels well when things are pre planned, where he can put a book together, where he can put a presentation together, and that sort of thing. And maybe if he does future debates, maybe he just should do dueling presentations, dueling presentations, rather than just free flowing verbal engagement. So, broader implications for communication. Um, so, you have a barrier here. Um, Wes Huff and people that um, they feel more comfortable with authority based off of books and based off of evidence and based off of bibliological references, um, that they're going to flow more with what Wes Huff is saying. People who really just want to get to the point, and they like to do that through stories and some emotion where they can feel, if you feel what you're feeling and what you're expressing, they're not going to go for what um, Wes Huff is, what he is saying, especially the core community that Billy Carson resonates with the most, a community he doesn't often um, acknowledge. He does sometimes, but a core community that's there with him nonetheless, right? And so um, the engagement strategies are going to put things, you know, the way that they are. So, recommendation, common ground, like I said, maybe just do dueling presentations. Maybe that would be the compromise for any future discussions like this. And people shouldn't panic because they think they lost a debate, or people, have us feel a certain way. You know, don't sweat the stuff like that, and just, you know, come out with a response that is a little bit more, um, well, anyway, moving on. So, structure the dialogue. One of the weaknesses of this particular discussion, it wasn't structured. Um, agree beforehand on the types of evidence or reasoning that will be acceptable in the debate. Maybe, maybe not. Um, Emphasize cross perspective respect. That wasn't there, but they were respectful, right? There was some respect there. So you can say that at least in the debate, from you what you saw from Wes Huff's full 2 hour video of the debate, there was respect there. There was respectfulness. Nobody was shouting or screaming and all this kind of stuff. So things were cool. So let's see what else we have here. So yeah, you know, you have a general halo of authority that hangs on people in the Western tradition when it comes to intellectualism. Um, and if you had a more formal structure, that would definitely be more in favor of Wes Huff, right? But Billy would still have a chance if you were talking about, you know, dueling presentations, right? Where, you know, the opposing side could pose questions about what you claim at a specific point in your presentation as you're giving the presentation, right? So anyway, that would be one approach. So definitely a lot of confirmation bias. We're all guilty of confirmation bias, no matter how educated we are or how rigorous we are, right? So debate audiences tend to reward presentation over substance. So, but I had a bigger conclusion on this. So let's see if we can get to that, right? And as I scroll through here, you can always pause the video and read through this if you're interested in this breakdown, right? But I want to get to the real conclusion, right? Yeah, let's get to the real conclusion. So let's see here. As you see, my sessions with AI can be quite extensive. So I've already read all of this. So we want to. All right. So this is, yeah, here we go. All right. So when we're looking at the fallout from all of this, right? What's going to happen next? I'd like to analyze things and predict. So Billy Carson's reaction, it actually amplified the controversy. It did make him more famous. He said this makes him more famous. He's correct about that. But at the same time, it also causes some short term churn in his customer base. And some people might perceive that he feels vulnerable because he is, and not in the way that you would think. He's vulnerable because he just came off of a catastrophic health situation, and so you know, in his recovery, this is a lot of stress to have on a person. He's not vulnerable from the standpoint of, he feels like his business is in trouble. Uh, Not at all. Um, in fact, um, if we look at a certain famous real estate developer in the United States who got involved in politics um, almost 10 years ago, they are famous for using controversy to advance their business interests. So, Billy's going to be fine. Let's see. Wes Huff wanted the public to know his side of the story in the wake of the legal actions that Billy Carson has initiated. What drew my interest is when Billy Carson said he's going to have a very extensive Bible study involving Paul Wallis. Paul Wallis is a 30-year experienced priest and former bishop and knows the Bible back and forward. Um, he is every bit of a PhD as Wes Huff and a former apologist or defender of Christianity. So um, he is going to join Billy Carson on this endeavor to um, clarify the understanding of the Bible. It's going to be very intense, folks. So I'm not going to tune into all of that, to any of that, I don't think, because I've already spent my life doing that. I've already been down that road. I know what lies there, and I've already been down that road. Not just recently, you know, but I spent 10 years doing that. So I'm not doing it anymore. So, but I know how powerful that's going to be for thousands of people when Billy gets that going. It's going to be one of the most powerful things you've ever seen. So this actually works out to Billy Carson's advantage over the long term, right? Um, it's going to work out to Billy Carson's benefit in general. And we'll have to see how this unfolds in terms of how it looks. So that's basically what I saw with this whole debate situation with Billy Carson and Wes Huff. And if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to discuss it in the comments. And until then, I will catch you on my next endeavor, which will be a very in-depth breakdown of cybersecurity that I've worked on for a good while here. And I actually intended to do that today, but um, whole Billy Carson thing came up. So they caught the person that was that um, that assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare, Luigi Margiano, and I guess ever since Mario um, married the princess, Luigi just ain't been the same. So until then, I'll catch you on the next one.